Hi. Okay, so I'm just going to start by saying I consider myself insanely privileged to be here. And there's a really big reason is I love this time of year. And I'm not talking about the Christmas season, which is coming, but I'm talking about the end of the year. And I don't know if I'm the only person that this happens to, but when I get to the end of the year, I always get kind of antsy. Like November hits and there's something in me that starts looking for the next biggest thing, for some great change. I'm convinced that if God wants me to do something crazy and extravagant, the time to ask me to do it is in November. So I consider myself incredibly privileged to get to talk to you right now at a time when so many of us are probably thinking about the next steps, what's coming next. Some of us have finished school, some of us are moving to new grades in school, some of us may be finishing uni or looking for new jobs, but there's something about this time of year that tends to bring about change. And so I consider myself privileged and in a little bit of a dangerous position to be speaking right now in a time when so many people are thinking about change and thinking about what's next. And I want to do the very best I can with that tremendous honor and that tremendous trust. So do you remember when you were a kid, and I'm talking early days, like grade 1, maybe grade 2, and you'd go to school and you'd have show and tell, and it was a big deal. Like it was a real big deal. You probably brought your pet rock Rex that you found in your garden, and it had a story about the adventure that you went on and how you found Rex. Well, I thought I'd do a little bit of show and tell with you today. This book is one of my favorite books. When I was 12, I got a gift certificate to a bookstore. And I was so excited to go and buy a book. I was so excited. I think it must have been one of the first times that I had money that was mine and I was getting to spend it. I'm pretty sure it was $12. And I bought this book. It's not Where's Wally. It's actually called The Two Princesses of Bamaray. Stay with me though. And this book became my favorite book. And to this day, it's one of my favorite stories. And it's about two sisters. And one of the sisters is brave and bold. They live in kind of a medieval-esque world. And she goes and she fights with the knights. She wants to slay the dragons. She wants to do everything you could possibly imagine on the spectrum of scary. And her sister is afraid. She's timid. She's afraid of everything on the spectrum from spiders to dragons. And the brave sister has a dream to go on a quest. But she doesn't go on this quest because her sister needs her. You see, their country is ravaged by a disease, kind of real Black Plague type stuff. If you get this disease, there's no cure. And the brave sister wants to go and wants to save her people by finding the cure. But she stays because her afraid sister needs her. She can't really handle life without her. But, as I'm sure you can guess, the plot takes a turn and the brave sister gets sick. She gets sick with this disease. And then the afraid sister has to make a choice. She could stay and be with her sister, be a comfort for her, be a place with her. And no one would begrudge her for that. No one else is brave enough to go looking for the cure, or she could go. She could go on this mission, and she decides to go. She goes and she does things that she's terrified of, and she's scared every step of the way. She encounters it all. Dragons, bad guys, bandits, strangers, nights alone in scary places, everything. And in the end, she finds the cure, she brings it back, and she saves her sister. But what happens is she doesn't realize how much she's changed until she gets home. You see, at the beginning of the story, there's a little part where there's a spider in her room, and she can't go near it. Her sister has to deal with it. But at the end of the story, there's a spider, and she deals with the spider. And it took that for her to realize that she'd been changed. All of the things that she'd done, in spite of her fear, she'd been changed. Things that used to scare her didn't scare her anymore. And the things that still scared her, she was willing to do it afraid. I like to think I've had a little bit of experience doing things afraid, and I like to think I've had a little bit of experience going on adventures. I remember, like Hogan mentioned, I've just come back from a whirlwind adventure overseas where I was serving as a missionary in Canada. And I remember getting on the plane and feeling that feeling in my gut of I'm going on an adventure and I'm terrified. And there's a part of me that thinks, who thought this was a good idea? And there was a part of me that thought, thank God I'm here, because I feel so alive and so ready to share with people what God has done in my life. And this year we've been on a journey. This year you've been on a journey. Whether this is your first time here tonight or whether you've been with us all year, we've been journeying with this theme, come. And we've looked at that from a lot of different angles. We've been on an adventure with this theme, come. Maybe there were some things that you found easy to hear and some things that you found hard to hear. But I have no doubt in my heart that you are here tonight because God has done something in your life. Because he's worked some miracle that's brought you here. And just like the person in 12-year-old Maddie's favorite book, a journey like that changes us. A journey where we meet Jesus changes us. The Bible is full of stories like this, and there's one that I'm going to share with you right now. It's from the Gospel of Mark. It says, a leper came to him being Jesus. Begging him and kneeling, he said to him, if you choose, you can make me clean. Moved with pity, Jesus stretched out his hand and touched him and said to him, I do choose. Be made clean. Immediately the leprosy left him and he was made clean. After sternly warning him, Jesus sent him away at once, saying to him, see that you say nothing to anyone. But go, show yourself to the priest and offer for your cleansing what Moses commanded, as a testimony to them. But the man who was healed went out and began to proclaim freely and to spread the word so that Jesus could no longer go into a town openly, but stayed out in the country, and people came to him from every quarter. To put that in a bit of context, if you were a leper, people didn't want to have much to do with you. And I suspect that meant that he didn't really want to reach out to a lot of people. I suspect that a life lived like that probably gave him some very real fear of reaching out to people. And yet, this man mustered up the courage and reached out to Jesus and said, if you want, you can make me clean. And Jesus responded. And this man was changed. In this case, he was changed physically. He was physically healed. And as a result of his encounter with Jesus, the scripture says he went out to proclaim freely what God had done. With no inhibitions, he didn't go looking for the perfect person. He didn't sit down to write the perfect story. Heck, he didn't even listen to the fact that Jesus said, don't tell them yet. He was so greatly changed that he immediately proclaimed freely the miracle that God had worked in his life. So tonight, my question for you is, what miracle has Jesus worked in your life? As a result of meeting Jesus, what has changed? As a result of encountering Jesus, what is it that you need to proclaim freely so intensely that nothing could shut you up or get in your way. In my life, I've always kind of known Jesus. From the time I was a little girl, I knew that he was there and I knew that he loved me. But I can think of a specific time in my life when I'd done some things that left me feeling pretty crap. Some things that were sin. Some things that left me looking at a mess that I'd made. And that left me with a lot of anger. And what started to happen was this anger that I had in me was starting to come out at other people. And people who didn't deserve my anger. But I was so angry. And I was so ashamed. And I didn't know what to do. I had these feelings that I just didn't know how to handle. And I went and I talked to someone about it, and they were a very matter-of-fact, direct person, and they looked at me and they said, all right, here's what you're going to do. You're going to go up there and you're going to pray about this. And then I'm going to come up and we're going to pray about this together. And I went, yes, ma'am. And I went and I prayed. And it was one of the realest prayers I think I've ever prayed in my life. I was crying. I was hurting. And I came to a place where I was able to say to God, this is messy. And I'm so ashamed, and I don't want you to see this. I don't want you in this place because I don't want you to see me like this. I don't want you to see this mess. But I've been told that you want to be a part of it. I've been told that if I let you, you'll come into this, no matter how messy it is. So, Jesus, if you want, you can come. And it was my chance to say to Jesus, come. And he showed up. In that space, I heard him speak to my heart, and he said to me, Madeline, I see you, and I know you, and I love you anyway. He stepped into my mess. He stepped into the crap that I was sitting in. And he said, I see it, I get it, don't worry, and don't worry, I'm fully aware that you've made this mess. But I'm here, I love you, and we're going to fix this. And that's my favorite story to tell, because that's the story of what Jesus has done in my life, because from that, I experienced a freedom that I'd never experienced before, because I realized that it doesn't matter how big my mess is, whether I made the mess or whether someone else made the mess, but he can come, and he will come into it. That man that was healed of leprosy, he could not be silenced because he had a story to tell. Everything that I've done since that experience has been because God gave me a story to tell. And I believe that the story that he gave me, that time when I encountered him, is something that there are people in this world that need to hear. And I believe the same about your story. And now before I go on, let's be clear, you have a story. And it's rich. You have a very real story. And there are people in this world that are desperate to hear it. And whether your story comes in the form of peace, or whether it comes in the form of unimaginable love that you encountered, or whether it comes in tears, or whether it comes in a moment of passion, there are people in this world that are crying out for the love that your story proclaims. Because they don't know. They don't know that there's a hope. They don't know that there's a light. They don't know that there's a love that would stick with them through anything. And like that man, I think that tonight Jesus is calling us forward to be brave, to step out and to proclaim the miracles that God has worked in us. Because like I said, people need to know. This year, as we journeyed with the theme Come, we've experienced and heard about this invitation from God to come to him. This outstretched hand from God inviting us. And I hope and I pray that you've had a chance to actually really encounter him. And if you feel like you haven't had that chance, then it's not too late. It's never too late. You can say, God, come. I want it, whatever it is. But the thing is, our God's not a one-shot God. It's not like we get one moment of encounter with God and that's done. He doesn't go like, oh, check, Josh has encountered me, so we're just going to move on. I'll focus over here now. That's not how he works. You're not some bucket list item. He doesn't just want to win you over once and then ignore you for the rest of your life while you go out and proclaim what he's done this one time. He wants you to come back again and again and again. And he wants you to encounter him again and again and again because there's always more. There's so much more. Because what God does is he does this crazy thing where he says to us, go. He sends us out. In some cases, he sends us to another country. In some cases, he's sending you to your school. He says, go, freely proclaim what I have done. And while you do that, find time for me. As you proclaim the miracles that I have worked, as you reach out to the people in your lives who need me, remain in me. It's a weird kind of dichotomy. That he somehow says go and come at the same time. But what I've learned is that as I go for him, he comes with me. And that I encounter him more and more and more as I do the work that he has for me to do. And I'm not here to tell you what work he has for you to do, because I don't know. But I know that it's big. And I know that it'll change the world. He says, go, be my hands and feet, proclaim my word, speak of the miracles I've done, tell them the changes that you've experienced because of me, and yet find time for me. Sit down with me. And I'm talking about prayer. I'm talking about a place where you can encounter God deeper. A place where you can say to him, come into this place. A place where you can say to him, I'm confused, or I'm tired. A place where he can share your joy with you and he can share your sorrow with you. And it's in that place, in a place where it's just you and him, that you will know him more, that you will know him deeper, and that you'll actually develop this personal relationship thing that people talk about. See, a personal relationship with Jesus, it's not an encounter, it's not a moment, it's time spent with him. Time where you get to learn how he talks to you as an individual person. I know, as you might have guessed and picked up on, I'm a fairly direct person. And so I know and I've experienced that God speaks to me pretty directly. A week into my time in Canada, we were in adoration, which is, we've probably experienced here sometimes. It's a time when the Eucharist, the Blessed Sacrament, is exposed. And it's a time of focused prayer in front of Jesus in the Blessed Sacrament. And we were in a time of adoration, and I was just praying normally, no big deal, just kind of sitting there going, "What's up, Jesus? You're here, I'm here, this is great." And I felt him speak to my heart in his pretty direct way for me. And he just said, "You know you're going to be here for a while, right?" And I said, "Cool, thanks for that heads up, God. Much appreciated." But it's through those individual one-on-one times with him that I've gotten to experience and learn how he speaks to me. And I want to get really specific here, because if you have a story to tell, and we've established that you do, and if God created you, which I'm pretty sure he did, then it makes sense to me that he wants to keep unfolding that story and that he wants to spend time with you just because he likes you as a person, because he created you, he made you unique. And what better gift to give God than time with him, where he just gets to hang out with someone that he really likes. And it's from that space that he will equip you, that he will send you out, and that he will change you again and again and again. And I want to get really specific here and lay out a challenge for you, because this is the last live of the year, right? So it means we have some time between things. And so my challenge is this: spend time with God every day. I don't care how much time it is, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 50 minutes, whatever works for you. But every day until January. Just give it a go. See what happens. Every day. And it's just you and him. Maybe it's in your room, maybe it's on a walk, but it's just you and it's just him. And you just say to him, "Come." You give him the invitation to come. You reach out to him like the man with leprosy and say, "Will you meet me here?" If there's nothing else that you hear, I want you to know that this invitation to come never goes away. That we have a God that loves us and that always wants us to come.